Namaskara and welcome to BIC Talks, a podcast by Bangalore International Centre, bringing you conversations that move, inform, and encourage discourse. Since 1962, World Theatre Day has been celebrated by International Theatre Institute centres, ITI cooperating members, theatre professionals, theatre organizations, theatre universities, and theatre lovers all over the world on the 27th of March. This day is a celebration for those who can see the value and importance of the art form theatre, and acts as a wake-up call for governments, politicians, and institutions which have not yet recognized its value to the people and to the individual and have not yet realized its potential for economic growth. So says the World Theatre Day website. To mark this day, through this episode of BIC Talks, we invited a cast of Bangalore theatre makers to speak to us about what they considered essential to their practice, to describe a toolbox, as it were, for a theatre artist, highlighting what they felt necessary for mindful involvement in the theatre. A second prompt was to pick a piece of text that has had an influence on their work. Here is what they had to say. Abhishek Majumdar, playwright, director, and educator.
Obviously, firstly, I want to wish everybody a very, very happy World Theatre Day. It is wonderful to have this one day where we are able to think about something that we do every day, which is to make theatre. I don't think we are able to reflect on it every day. So it's a great opportunity to do that. And I thank BIC for asking me to be part of this. So I suppose I'll start by talking about, a couple of essential things that I think can be part of a toolkit for a theatre maker. And I think the first thing is to train oneself to be an audience, a good audience. To me, over the years, I think that has been my biggest learning, that it takes a lot of effort sometimes to be a good audience to forms that one is not familiar with. For example, somebody in their school days may not have heard a certain kind of music or seen a certain kind of visual art or been familiar with a folk form. And how do we then take ourselves as audiences into these new journeys and really spend a little bit of time trying to engage with something that we are not familiar with and try to appreciate it, understand the society behind that art, the aesthetics of that and the politics of that art in order to just make our lives richer. I think that is absolutely essential to make work, because after all, what we make is just an impression of what we have inside. And so unless we fill ourselves with what we love, which is probably performance and arts and life itself, we are unable to make the thing outside. So that's one thing, I think, which is most crucial than anything else in my view. And the second thing is very simple, to be able to have a everyday kind of physical routine, to know that, okay, you're able to do something physically every day, because theater is a very, very demanding physical task. It's like having a career in the sports. It needs long hours, it needs travel, it needs physical endurance. So I think physical discipline is useful to last in it for long, which means, some form of exercise, some, just drinking water regularly. I think these kind of simple things really, but I can't stress more on the importance of just being disciplined in one's health. And lastly, what I want to say is to be able to have some sustained, friendships and relationships, and to be able to value those is extremely vital. Because we make theatre with many, many people in the world. We make theatre with different societies, again, different kinds of people. But everybody, I think, needs a security blanket. Some people who you go to when you have failed. And a lot of theatre is failure. Only 10% of rehearsal is actually what finally makes it to a show. 90% of it is just process. And there are days when great shows don't work, the hall was too noisy, the review was very bad, or we just didn't work that day, it didn't click. And there are days when you don't end up making great shows. You try your best, but what you've made is pretty mediocre. And that day you need some people to believe that you tried. And I think that's really, really important to, again, sustain, to know that there'll be highs and lows, but not fans. They don't have to be your fans. Absolutely not. But they have to be friends. So I think friendship health and being a good audience are, to me, the most critical things about being a theater practitioner in a sustained way. The second prompt, the second question is about my favorite text. I'm going to very briefly talk about two texts. One is a wonderful book by William Kentridge, the South African artist, who is a visual artist, but also works across forms. And he has this beautiful book called Six Lessons in Drawing, or Six Drawing Lessons. And what he does is he's done these lectures where he starts by talking about the role of the artist as the philosopher, as somebody who's thinking like in Plato's cave, who's thinking about what lies outside that cave and what is the larger purpose of questioning. And then he talks about his neighborhood and the history of your neighborhood, then about your family, and then brings it down to the bookshelf. And essentially he looks at the process of creation of art as if it was the artist engaging with the most macro idea to the most tangible thing, which is one book in your bookshelf. I find that way of thinking about art very useful because I think every day is different. Some days you just have access to the book rack. Some days you have access to your neighborhood. Some days you have access to great ideas. But every day you make something, you learn something because you have access to all this, from small to big, and to be able to appreciate that is really useful. So that's a book I would highly recommend. And the second thing that I really, my favorite playwright is Mohan Rakesh in Hindi. And I think all of Rakesh's texts are very good. But I love the opening of Aadhe Adhure, where this man comes on stage and says, I am like anybody else that you have met. I'm somebody you bumped into. I'm somebody you crossed. I'm that person. It's just that I'm standing here, so I'm trying to tell a story. And I think that is, to me, the beginning of theater, that it is made by common people. It's made by people who, if you see on the street, a theater actor, a director, unlike people in many other art forms, there's nothing special about us. We cannot dance in a great way. We cannot sing in a great way. We often can't, paint. But when we are on stage, when we work on or backstage, together we mean something. And I think that's what the theater is about. It's about common people coming together to be a little more for some time. This is the opening monologue. फिर एक बार, फिर से वही शुरुआत. मैं नहीं जानता आप क्या समझ रहे हैं मैं कौन हूं और क्या आशा कर रहे हैं. मैं क्या कहने जा रहा हूं. आप शायद सोचते हो कि मैं इस नाटक में कोई एक निश्चित इकाई हूं, अभिनेता, प्रस्तुतकर्ता, व्यवस्थापक या कुछ और. परंतु मैं अपने संबंध में निश्चित रूप से कुछ भी नहीं कह सकता, उसी तरह जैसे इस नाटक के संबंध में नहीं कह सकता, क्योंकि ये नाटक भी अपने में मेरी ही तरह अनिश्चित है. अनिश्चित होने का कारण यह है कि, परंतु कारण की बात करना बेकार है. कारण हर चीज का कुछ ना कुछ होता है. हालांकि ये आवश्यक नहीं कि जो कारण दिया जाए वास्तविक कारण वही हो. और जब मैं अपने ही संबंध में निश्चित नहीं हूं, तो मैं और किसी चीज के कारण अकारण के संबंध में निश्चित कैसे हो सकता हूं. मैं वास्तव में कौन हूं? ये एक ऐसा सवाल है जिसका सामना करना इधर आकर मैंने छोड़ दिया है. जो मैं इस मंच पर हूं वह यहां से बाहर नहीं, और जो बाहर हूं, खैर इसमें क्या आपकी क्या दिलचस्पी हो सकती है कि मैं यहां से बाहर क्या हूं. शायद अपने बारे में इतना कह देना ही काफी है कि मैं सड़क के फुटपाथ पर चलते आप अचानक जिस आदमी से टकरा जाते हैं वह आदमी मैं हूं. आप सिर्फ घूर कर मुझे देख लेते हैं. इसके अलावा मुझसे कोई मतलब नहीं रखते कि मैं कहाँ रहता हूं, क्या काम करता हूं, किस किस से मिलता हूं और किन किन परिस्थितियों में जीता हूं. आप मतलब नहीं रखते क्योंकि मैं भी आपसे मतलब नहीं रखता. और टकराने के क्षण मैं आप मेरे लिए वही होते हैं जो मैं आपके लिए होता हूं. इसीलिए जहां इस समय मैं खड़ा हूं वहां मेरी जगह आप भी हो सकते थे. दो टकराने वाले व्यक्ति होने के नाते आप में और मुझ में बहुत बड़ी समानता है. यही समानता आप में और उसमें, उसमें और उस दूसरे में और मुझ में. बहरहाल इस गणित के पहेली में कुछ नहीं रखा है. बात इतनी है कि विभाजित होकर मैं किसी न किसी अंश में आप में से हर एक व्यक्ति हूं. और यही कारण है कि नाटक के बाहर हो या अंदर, मेरी कोई भी एक निश्चित भूमिका नहीं है. I'll stop there. It's a long monologue, but I think that's basically the part that I was referring to. So yeah, those are my two texts: Mohan Rakesh's Adhe Adhure and William Kentridge's 6 Lessons in Drawing.
Arundhati Raja, actor, director, educator, co-founder of Jagrati Theatre, Bangalore.
So hi, here we are with this podcast for World Theatre Day, and thinking about looking at what we were asked to do was to look at this toolkit. And I thought about it a long time because I was wondering how and what this little box would be with these various tools for theatre artists, as it is said. And then, of course, you come back from the thinking, and yeah, it would be nice if we had this little box we could open and, oh yeah, this tells me how to be a great actor. Oh yeah, this tells me how to do this or that. But then I thought about it, okay, in terms of theatre, all right, we have the actor, yes, without whom really there is no theatre to be performed. But along with that, you have the other people who are involved. So the director needs their own toolkit, which could be basically, I was thinking, the actor, the script, or the devised work that they may be working on. And then there's all those people who design your sound, your costume, your lighting people, props, etc. But then I thought, okay, let me come back and think about these one person who is basically required for any piece of theatre, whether it's devised or whether it's from a script. And so the actor really has only one box for him or herself, and it's really their own body and their voice. There is nothing else. And if you're not able to understand how you can change your body, your voice, your facial expressions. I know these are terms that we all use a lot in theatre, but they are also so important for an actor to understand for themselves. And so in a way, I was thinking this box is really the actor's mind. Because if you as an actor can keep your mind open and say, right, I want to try this kind of theatre, I want to try that kind. When it comes to dance, if you're a Bharatanatyam dancer or an Odissi dancer, you're not asked, why have you not learned Odissi? Why have you not learned Bharat? But in theatre, that tends to happen. I've been asked over my 40 odd years of theatre, but why don't you do street theatre? Why don't you do devised work more, etc.? And I always come back with the thing, I said, what I like to do is work from a script. And that's how older theatre people may have started from, yes. But within that, there's so much that I can do. Yes, I'm using the script, I'm using the words of someone who has put down their thoughts onto paper, put down a storyline. But wow, what we can do with that, right? It doesn't mean that because we follow the words that have been written by a playwright, that we cannot be creative. And that's where the mind of an actor, I think, has to really open themselves out. And I think now that we tend to not do so much reading, not look at the heavier kinds of play scripts. Please note, I use the word play script because I don't like the word text to be used for a play script. I know that it's done and everybody uses it and it's come from computer language, basically. It's because text to me is something which is static, all right? But a play script is anything but static. It's dialogue. Even a monologue is a dialogue with someone, either the audience or another character. If it's a soliloquy, then it's with yourself, your own character. So you're never saying words. It's not like reading a book and reading those words and making your own things of it. You're reading the script, you're looking at it, and you have to apply it according to what the storyline or the plot of the play is. And that does not in any way, actually, if you keep your mind open, in fact, hinder you as an actor at all. You can devise ways of how you want to present that script. You can think about, what is this character like? Is this character saying these things because it's reacting from the other character, which it always is? You know, acting basically, and I'm not sure, I can't remember who actually said these lines, that acting is all about listening. because you're either listening to yourself or basically you're reacting what the other actor is saying. And I think it's very important. And often when we watch a play and we think, why is this not working? What is going on? It's not that the actors are not bad in that sense. And then you realize that nobody's actually talking to each other. They're saying the lines of the script. And that's when you get a play that doesn't seem to come through. It doesn't seem to come alive. And I think that's where it's important that you look at the tools which you have as an actor, which is only your body, your voice, and then your mind, which then has to read the script, not on your own, well, initially on your own, of course, make your own assumptions, think about it, and then obviously sit with the rest of the cast, and importantly, your director. Because I'm working more as a director in the last few years than I have as an actor. And I like to be able to sit with the actors and we discuss what each of us thinks is their character, how they think it should go. Why are there these dynamics between these characters? Why is this character sort of behaving in this way? What is it that's happening in the scene with the other characters? But at the end of the day, when we've had these discussions, eventually you need one person to bring this all together. Otherwise, it can go everywhere, all over the place. And honestly, the people that you're doing all this work for, which is your audience, will be lost because they don't know what on earth is happening, right? So some kind of consensus has to come to. It may not be the same as another group of actors maybe doing that same play. They may have a different way. But when you are performing as a team, you as an actor, along with everyone else, and in particular the director, you have to come to a consensus about how you're going to go on with this story. We talk now, we know that stories are so important. Really, the plot of a script is basically the storyline. So really, that's putting it in a nutshell is what I feel the actor should be doing. I do think that there is also a tendency and an ability for us, and I've said this often, and I'm not putting anybody down when I say this, because it's just an area that bothers me. When you are a musician or a dancer, you will go onto stage and put on a performance once you have reached a certain level as a dancer or as a musician. Now, often because theatre is it's something that we can do, we can get together in a group and have lots of fun putting something together, which I don't decry at all. But often in doing that, one forgets the actual craft of theatre, the actual intelligence, the knowledge that is required to be within a good theatre atmosphere. And I think it's this, not the academic side at all. Academic is the wrong word. But I think it's this aspect of that there are things that need to be learned. It's not just if you speak well, you can be an actor. That's not true. And there are so many other things that one has to learn about being an actor on stage. I'm not talking about film now. That requires a whole different ball game of expertise. So I do think that it's important to really get a good basic. There's a lot of training that one can get on physicality. And I think that because we are going away from this whole business of reading and, of looking at the older play scripts, just to use them, even if there's no way you can put that on as a production because it's so vast, it requires maybe a lot of set. There may be some that you can adjust and you don't have to have that set just to carry the whole play through. There are many really, really good plays like that. But I think that I think it's important. This is the adjunct, the other toolkit that I think any actor needs, and is to read as many play scripts as possible. I mean, this is so many. There are all your older Western playwrights. There are the new people, the Pulitzer Prize winners. And we've got in India our own wealth of plays and playwrights in all the different languages. And one thing is that, if you don't read and write Marathi, fine. Vijay Tendulkar and various other playwrights, they have had their works translated into English. And whatever one says, once that is done, a whole world is opened up. I think this is basic. Everybody should read as many plays as possible, wide variety, including things like someone who, like Tennessee Williams, who will have a whole one full page, which would be a full description of the set, of the characters. When the character walks in, it'll be what they're wearing and everything, right down to the. Doesn't mean this is what we should be doing now, but it does give you a background to the kind of vastness that theatre can have, and some little click of an idea may come from it. This piece that I was, was going to sort of read out, because I haven't acted for many years, I couldn't really think of any one particular piece. And a lot of the plays I've done have not been many with monologues. They've been very much the dialogue, and, so it does require another actor. But then it occurred to me that it was more actually with working with our younger people in our drama class, where looking at classic theatre, I'm going back as far as our Sanskrit theatre and even further back to Greek theatre. And I found that with Sanskrit theatre, of course, the traditional, there is a lot, they do have a lot of comedy in it, and there are a whole genre. Of course, there are other serious plays, no doubt, but there is a whole genre. It's a different way of writing that was there, because they wrote for, in the same way Shakespeare did, for the people. And I went back then to a Greek piece. My reason was because I remembered a comment that was made to me after a production of Yayati, Girish Karnad's Yayati that I had done. And we came out and we were in the foyer in the theater, and this person came up to me and said, "Oh, it's good that you're bringing this old play back." And I felt totally thrown by this comment, actually, because it seemed to me that, it was an old play. When you use the word old, it sounds worse somehow than if you're referring to a person and saying elderly. But somehow I felt, what was that? What is with that? And then I was thinking, is it because you feel the way that one does it is not the new way of doing theatre, or do you feel the storyline is not modern? Do you think the audience won't get it? I don't believe any of that. I think a good play doesn't matter when it's written. If it's good, the audience will get it. That's, of course, if your performance and your production is good. So anyway, I went back to a play that we did way back in 2011 or 12, I think, soon after we opened. This is Lysistrata, okay? Lysistrata by Aristophanes. And some of you may know of the play, but the reason I chose this is because I hope that when you hear it, you realize this could be written any time now. It's as I use the word relevant. The word relevant is used a lot in theatre, usually in criticism. Oh, this isn't relevant anymore, and if it's good theatre, it's always relevant as far as I'm concerned. So just a quick intro. The play, in case, just a very short synopsis. Tired of war between their cities, Lysistrata rallies the women. If they withhold sex from the men, there is sure to be a surge of peace talks. All the women agree to refrain from amorous activities. The men do not know what to do. Okay? I mean, that's a very simplified way of putting it. And this is, of course, during the Trojan Wars. So in this scene, the women have taken over the Acropolis. The magistrate comes to arrest them, but finds himself in a battle of words with Lysistrata. She advises him of the women's plight during the wars. Be calm then, be calm, and I'll go ahead. All the long years when the hopeless war dragged along, we, unassuming, forgotten in quiet, endured without question, endured in our loneliness all your incessant child's antics and riot. Our lips were kept tied, though aching with silence, though well all the while in our silence we knew how wretchedly everything still was progressing, by listening dumbly the day long to you. For always at home, you continued discussing the war and its politics loudly, and we sometimes would ask you, our hearts deep with sorrowing, though we spoke lightly, though happy to see, Oh, what's to be inscribed on the side of the treaty stone? Oh, what, dear, was said in the assembly today? Mind your own business, he answered me growlingly. Hold your tongue, woman, or else go away. And so I would hold it.
Jagdish Raja, actor, director, co-founder of Jagriti Theatre, Bangalore.
Right. I've been asked to talk about drama and acting and something about a toolkit. I must admit, I'm a little perplexed by the term toolkit. For me, a toolkit is something that is taken by a plumber, an electrician, carpenter, but he goes off on what we used to call calls to the customer. But I believe it is a term used for the gathering of resources that one may need in one's job. As an actor, I have a toolkit which is comprised mainly of what I can give to it: voice, character, gestures, the expressions, the pauses. But I'm also helped a great deal on stage by two other specific people. That's the costume designer and the makeup artist, somebody who makes me up to look more the part that I'm playing, and the costume designer who designs costumes that go with that character that I'm playing. There's another very important person who supplies the props, the properties. Do you know what I mean by properties? I don't mean real estate farms in suburban Bangalore. I'm talking about items that we bring on stage, like a pipe, for instance, or a bag as we walk in because we've come in from somewhere else, which the audience will get to know of in due course. Newspapers that we hold or read or throw away, all of these have to be provided. Makeup, costumes, props are provided, and they make up a large portion of how confidently we can tell the story. Play acting is, we did it as children. Do you remember Hospital? Do you remember Doctor? Do you remember Cops and Robbers? Hey? Do you remember getting shot and dying was great drama? Unfortunately, what we didn't have was an audience. We might have had a few gawky kids watching totally agog at what we were doing, but we didn't really have an audience. And this is where theatre becomes the kind of thing that it is. It becomes a social, political, and a very strong human rights machine to draw attention to ourselves. And I must admit that more and more of this is being done. Writing of a nature that evokes problems that we have. Some playwrights have been very well known for this kind of thing. And they've used the stage as a platform in front of a live audience. We owe something to this. The fact that they're going to spend time and, in many instances, a lot of money if you're performing in the West End or on Broadway, a lot of money to be seated in the audience in the dark, getting a collective view of the story that you're about to tell. We owe something to that audience. I've been on stage, I don't know, a dozen times, dozens of times. And people say to me, I suppose you've been on stage so often, you don't get nervous. And I say, the day I don't get nervous, I'm dead. One gets nervous. One doesn't suffer stage fright. These are two different things. Stage fright is going into a panic situation because you're going to face an auditorium full of people. Being nervous is being aware that you have a task to fulfill and that you owe it to the people watching a degree of excellence and, most importantly, of teamwork. You're working with a group of people, other actors on stage. They need you to give them the right kind of message, the right nuance of what you're saying. It's in the script. It's all in the script. And I paraphrase Shakespeare when I say, and this above all to the text be true. And then it follows as the night, the day, thou canst be false to the play. Trust the text. There is a tendency among us amateurs far away from the playwright's domain to collectively, and I think we do this, we collectively say, oh, this line doesn't sound too right. Let's change it. That is doom. That's the beginning of doom. Do not change a word of the text. You wouldn't do it if it was Shakespeare. Don't do it if it was a young playwright who's just opening up writing in Bangalore. The text is sacrosanct. The other thing, of course, is teamwork. We have to agree that each one of us is playing a part and that each part has a definite purpose in the structure of the play and that each one needs to be delivered as well and as professionally as it can. Some years ago, I used to judge inter-school plays, inter-school drama competitions. And one of the categories, of course, was best production, best actor, supporting actor, and so on down the line. What I did find, and what my fellow judges also found, is that most of the awards would go to one production. There would seldom be a situation where a production received an award and none of the individual components of that production, acting, set design, costume, did not. There might have been situations where the best actor, male or female, went to another production because there was somebody extraordinarily, but very seldom. It was a collection of all these talents, which I had said earlier, sets, costumes, props, lights, sound effects, if there are any, that come together to produce a story that we tell. That's all it is. Acting in a play is telling a story. And it's a story that we did as children when we played doctor with, I remember, with a cycle wheel tube put over our shoulders to mimic a stethoscope. Do you remember doing that? We all did it. It was part of growing up. All of us played it. All of us did it. If you look at David Attenborough's wildlife stories on BBC Earth, all animals do it. They all play act. It is part of becoming, evolving into adulthood. It is essential. And I'm glad to say that drama is very much a part of our lives and that it goes a long way in making us successful in whatever we do. Be it because we're always play acting, we're always making presentations, we're always talking to customers, talking to clients. Remember, going on stage is nothing new. It's like the first time you went on your bike, cycling on your own, and your parents and your uncles, and your nieces and nephews and brothers and sisters watched and clapped as you managed to be able to cycle yourself away into the distance. That's all it is. I think I'll recite this first and then go back into the details. The old schoolmaster. He sat at his desk at the close of day, for he felt the weight of his many years. His form was bent, and his hair was grey, and his eyes were dim with the falling tears. For the school had finished, and his task was done, and the house seemed now so strangely still, as the red beams of the setting sun stole silently over the windowsill. Stole silently into the twilight gloom, and the deepening shadows fell athwart the vacant seats and the vacant room and the vacant place in the old man's heart. For the school had been all in all to him, who had no wife, child, land, nor gold, but his frame was weak, and his eyes were dim, and the fiat was issued at last. Too old. Too old? Too old? These men forget I guided their tender years. But their hearts were hard, and they pitied not my trembling lips and my falling tears. Too old? Old, it was all they said. I looked in their faces one by one, but they turned away. And my heart was led. Dear Lord, it is hard, but thy will be done. The night stole on, and a blacker gloom was over the vacant benches cast. Master sat in his silent room, but his mind was back in the days long past. And he smiled as his kindly glances fell on the well-beloved faces there, John, Rob, and Will, and laughing Nell, and blue-eyed Bess with her golden hair, and Tom, and Charlie, Ben, and Paul, who stood at the head of the spelling class, all in their places. And yet, they all were lying under the graveyard grass. Thus all night long till morning came, and darkness folded a robe of gloom, and the sun looked in with his eye of flame on the vacant seats of the silent room, and the wind crept over the windowsill and swept through the aisles in a merry rout. But the face of the master was white and still. His work was finished. His school was out. I recited this at the inter-school elocution competition in Bombay many years ago. And I was adjudged the prizeman, the first prizeman. Why I liked about this poem was that it switches between narrator and character and gives the character an opportunity to express himself, and then goes back to a neutral narrator again. I hope I've done justice to this. Thank you.
Kirtana Kumar, actor, director, author, and co-founder of Infinite Souls.
Look around you. Keep your ears to the ground. Look at your skin. Listen to your voice. You're very much post-colonial. But don't go find yourself another well to drown in, another clique to hang on to, another icon to uncritically follow. It's all same to same if it's A, boring, B, has a stick up its ass, and C, excludes someone. Language is only a means to communicate, so speak any language you feel like, whether you dream in it or not. Language is to say, feed me, I love you, what color are your eyes, I hurt, help me. Language is not to oppress or marginalize. Accents don't matter either. You can sound Kannadiga or Anglo or NRI or Hully boy or gully girl. Eventually, it's your intention that matters, not clues into your background. Keep listening to yourself in the silence of your search. Heed your instincts. What are the stories you wish to tell? We're fraught today with crises and pain. Engage with it. Dive deep into the zeitgeist. Be a magpie. Collect ideas like baubles. Collect baubles too, and pictures and visions and words and sounds. On your journey, you will come upon many others. Try to remember they are journeying too, and share the food and water of your higher self. Be sustainable. Sustain your spirit, that vagrant creature that simply will not shush, and be duly satisfied by things bought from a shop, things that can be paid for in cold hard cash, like cars or Bose headphones or space travel. This animal spirit of yours needs the dark assurances of free expression and vast open spaces to forage. It desires petrichor, bathing in forest green, the sound of frogs, making love in the purple rain. Nurture the following. An open mind. There's no teaching this. It begins in your gut. It has everything to do with all that is forbidden in the civilian world. Because first of all, you are not a civilian. You are Sakshi, sacred witness, a magician, an actor, and cannot be bound by trivial human hang-ups, whether to do with sexuality or gutters or class or shadows or caste or stigma or religion or dirt or taboos or reputations lost or gained. Your vagus nerve has superpowers. Your brain can be gymnastic, Allow it this opportunity. An agile body, there is no one way to move, no single path to biomechanical balance. Find what works for you, and remember, our hips don't lie. Enjoy your body, offer it pleasure as it evolves and changes. Don't fall prey to external pressures. An intimate voice. If you're going to speak on stage, breathe, follow punctuation, and trust the script to do its work first. In whatever language, don't bother acting till you've breathed and punctuated. Nurture the desire to keep reading everything: news reports, plays, poems, essays, biographies. And if you're not reading, listen to everything and don't respond. It's not always necessary. Nurture the ability to retain wonder, the willingness to take risks, the desire to keep creating whatever it is: a play, a painting, a meal, a forest. Develop a hearty appreciation of the role failure plays in your evolution. Laugh. Theatre of the absurd happened because life is truly absurd. Let no one tell you otherwise. Laugh at yourself and at all the holy cows that are thrown your way. Be happy first with your own work. Be your own audience of one. Then move outwards with honest intentionality to speak to touch, to poke holes in the status quo. If you dazzle, that's merely accidental. Trends are short lived, as are opinions. The caravanserai of your journey continues. Your holy intention is only to transform. And the audience? Oh, they're actors too, oftentimes, in the right costume, the right venue, the right lines. And then they stop acting and turn witness instead. Sakshi. How glorious to be witnessed by this audience, open, curious, with the ability to retain wonder, the willingness to take risks, the desire to keep creating patterns by joining the dots of speech, movement, wit, and visual. What a dialogue we get into then. This audience and us actors on stage, we who witnessed life bring alchemical possibilities to stage, and the audience witnesses our witnessing. Done right, what camaraderie, what bliss! Such is the magic of performing for another. Such is the Maya of theatre. Happy World Theatre Day. The text I've chosen to read for you is from Euripides' Medea, which is a play that's about 3,000 years old. Evil, most evil. Since you grant'st me that comfort, the worst weapon left me now to smite a coward, you comes to me, you, mine enemy. Oh, say, how call you this? To face and smile the comrade whom his kiss betrayed? Scorn? Insult? Courage? None of these. 'Tis but of all man's inward sicknesses the vilest, that he knoweth not of shame nor pity. Yet I praise him that he came to me. It shall bring comfort once to clear my heart on you, and you shalt wince to hear. I will begin with that, the thing between me and you, that first befell, Jason. I saved you. I saved you. Let your own men be witness, every one that sailed the ship Argo. I saved you. I sent alone to yoke with yokes the bulls of fiery breath, and sow the acre of the lords of death. And mine own ancient serpent, who did keep the golden fleece, the eyes that knew not sleep in shining coils, him also did I smite dead for your sake, and lifted up the light that bade you live. Myself, uncounseled, stole forth from father and from home, and fled with you. Oh, single-hearted more than wise was I. I murdered Peleus, yea, in agony by his own daughter's hands, for sake of you. I swept their house like war. And have you then accepted all? Oh, evil yet again, and cast me off, and taken you for bride another, and with children at your side? One could forgive a childless man, but no, I have borne you children. Is sworn faith so low and weak a thing? I understand it not. Are the old gods dead? Are the old laws forgot and new laws made? Since not my passioning, but your own heart cries for a thing forbidden? Poor, poor right hand of mine, whom he did cling to, and these knees so cravingly. We are unclean, you and I. We have caught the stain of bad men's flesh and dreamed our dreams in vain. You comest to befriend me? Give me then your counsel. 'Tis not that I dream again for good from you, but questioned you wilt show the viler. Say, now whither shall I go? Back to my father? Him I did betray, and all his land when we two fled away. To those poor Peliad maids? For them 'twere good to take me in, who spilled their father's blood. Aye, so my whole life stands. Oh, there will be merry mocking when the lamps are red. Where go the bridegroom's babes to beg their bread in exile, and that migrant woman who gave all to save him? Oh, great God, shall gold withal bear thy clear mark, to show the lie within ere all too late? Aye, mock me, you have somewhere to lay your head, but I go naked to mine exile. By seducing and forsaking you, on your house also, as chance falls, I am a living curse. I will not seek your friends, I will not take your givings, give them not. Fruits of a stem unholy bring no blessing after them. Go, you art weary for the new delight you wooest, so long tarrying out of sight of her sweet chamber. Go, fulfill your pride of bridegroom, for it may be such a bride shall await you. Yea, God heareth me in this, as your own heart shall sicken ere it kiss.
Lakshmi Chandrasekhar, actor and educator.
What are the essentials of theatre? First of all, I'd say one has to be very sure about why you want to do theatre, because that will decide what kind of theatre you want to do. Are you doing theatre for money? If so, you may have to compromise on the quality of theatre that you do. Or if you are just being an idealist and want to do theatre for the love of theatre, then you should be prepared to compromise on the quality of your life, because theatre doesn't pay you enough. It doesn't pay you at all sometimes, but if it does, it is not enough for anyone's livelihood. Girish Karnad had once said he does all the kind of roles in commercial Hindi films so that he can write the kind of plays he wants to. So I think of that as a very important thing to keep in mind. And secondly, once you have chosen theatre, you have to give yourself to it totally. Theatre requires a lot of dedication and self-discipline. You got to keep fit. Your body and your voice will have to be very fit in order to do theatre, which means again you may have to sacrifice some of the things you would love to do. You have to sacrifice your free time, you have to sacrifice your social activities, and you have to sacrifice some of those nice fried things that you would love to eat, because that might affect your voice, it might affect the fitness of your body. And the other thing, important thing, is not to be self-conscious about the body when you're doing theatre. That can really be a huge obstacle. You have to let your body express emotions freely. That's what theatre is about. You act with your voice and with your body. So both of them have to lend themselves easily to the kind of situations that a play might demand. Coming to the text that has always inspired me. I have always thought of myself as a feminist. Even before I knew much about feminism, I tried to snatch my freedom. And as when I came to college, we had to study an essay by Virginia Woolf. In that essay, Virginia Woolf talks about how she had to kill the angel in the house to be a good writer. This is the passage that I love the most. She's describing that angel in the house. She was intensely sympathetic. She was immensely charming. She was utterly unselfish. She excelled in the difficult arts of the family life. She sacrificed herself daily. If there was a chicken, she took the leg. If there was a draft, she sat in it. In short, she was so constituted that she never had a mind or a wish of her own, but preferred to sympathize always with the minds and wishes of others. If you want to be the angel in the house, that means you have to give up all your wishes and ambitions and be unselfish. I think a bit of selfishness is good for a woman. It helps her do what she would love to do with her life. So I have constantly been trying to kill this angel within me so that I can pursue my interest in theatre.
Padmavati Rao, actor, poet, and educator.
Namaste, this is Padmavati Rao, wishing you a happy World Theatre Day 2023. I'd like to begin with something that's very true for me. Life is drama, and for the theatre practitioner, drama is life. For the actor and the director especially, I feel that one treads the path between one's own personhood and that of the character to get to the core truth that both begs and dictates action and emotion. The person that the character is may be very different from one's own persona. If one has to bring alive the character's persona with convincing clarity, the performer's persona would necessarily have to recede into the background, on the mental plane for sure. However, it must remain present as the provider of the craft, but only to the extent that it allows for the conviction of the character to blossom. That is when the character can look the audience in the eye, in the act, but ironically without pretense. The lights shine in paradoxically real tears. For the experience to evoke intense emotion in the audience, it would require willingness to walk the path for the duration of the performance without distraction, without any sort of thing pulling away and tugging away at your attention, with enthusiastic engagement. Without this, the rasanubhav cannot be mutual, nor can it have a certain degree of equality or even dignity. With changing times and advanced technology, watches that flash with every movement of the hand, phones that are left on during performances, these things rob the performers and the audience of the magic of the interplay of darkness in the audience and light on stage. Audiences would have to truly respect their own time and space first to become capable of respecting that time and space that they enter in the theatre. How else can a story unfold and flow with the depth of its truth? How else can the invisible bond between the performers and the audience be established? The audience is to a large degree a collective of strangers that gather with some commonality of expectation of the performance. However, is the fulfillment of expectation sabotaged by the audience itself, with greater value placed on engagement with gadgets during the performance? These are questions we shall have to visit in all sincerity if we are to afford and make available to ourselves depth of meaning and mirroring of life that drama offers us. Theatre gives us the opportunity to take a look, a close look at ourselves at the individual and collective level, as singular, unique entities, and as players in a larger context, in society, in the world. As we sit in the dark, we can laugh, cry, we can express ourselves in the comfort of togetherness. Theatre allows us the acknowledgement of the otherwise inexpressible, of all that which remains unexpressed within, or suppressed within, or repressed even. It is the ground where the I and the you coexist. The performer and the audience become more aware of the I within when they offer the ground to the you or to the other to play out. It becomes possible for the mirrored self to be acknowledged. And this mirrored self can be acknowledged with all its glory and glitches. Often there is a part of oneself that one is unaware of. When someone points it out to us, we even deny it outright. It's part of the who me couldn't be syndrome. That part of oneself is not only unacknowledged but even unacceptable. But it exists. Theatre is where we get to explore this part of ourselves that's in full view of the world and somehow hidden from ourselves. As we watch it in the other and accept it as true of the other, we have the opportunity to do a reality check for ourselves. This reality check is an imperative for the theatre maker and audience. It is a vital pathway to one's inner truth. It allows us the luxury of articulating for ourselves that which we dare not speak of. It offers us the mirror to take a close look at that depth within that was hitherto hidden by us from us. It offers us the opportunity to cross the threshold from the dark into the light, to see and show our true selves without the masks. It means making oneself vulnerable, the very thing our survival instinct resists. As theatre makers, it is this vulnerability that makes everything real in a world of make believe. The irony is that when I'm ready to fall flat on my face, I don't. It is the naked truth of my vulnerability that seems to hold up strong despite all the fragility. As practitioners and audiences, we shall be tested for our willingness to bring forth with honesty our vulnerability, the good, bad, the ugly that lurks under the facade. It is in crossing that threshold between the known and the unknown, between what is felt and unexpressed and what is seen and expressed. It allows for the replenishment of the being. It creates the ground for the seeds of change to be sown. This World Theatre Day, may we as performers and audiences ask ourselves these questions. We thought we had wholesome answers too. May we question all that within us that needs revival and rejuvenation so that we may nurture each other as one human being to another, as souls on a journey of immeasurable value. I would have liked to read something, but all my books are packed away. I'm in the process of shifting. So I'll narrate something I experienced. I was, I think, all of 16, and we were on a train. I was traveling with Girish Karnad, with whom I've worked for across 4 decades of my life. And we were traveling and we were standing in the corridor of this train, I think, to feel the breeze. And he was talking about Shakuntala, and he said, do you know what Shakuntala said when she went to the palace and Dushyant did not recognize her? And I said, I don't know. So she said, you've changed. And those words, those two words, just stayed with me forever. It has remained a huge preoccupation in my life. And to see how one changes and one is unaware of how one is changing. The process of change is on all the while in our world of becoming. But we somehow don't seem to be aware of it, while it is apparent to the other. Often we refuse to accept it, even when it is shown to us. But these words, "you've changed," from that day on, I think I held very close to my heart, and I stayed inspired by it to constantly review how one is changing in order to make it more wholesome for oneself and the other. Because change is pretty much the only evidence of growth. And if one is to grow in ways that nurture oneself and the other, one is going to have to visit these words. You've changed. I hope this inspires.
Vijay Padki, actor, director, playwright, trustee emeritus, Bangalore Little Theatre.
Another World Theatre Day is upon us, supposedly the birthday of William Shakespeare. I suspect this is not yet known in New Delhi. When it does get to be known, we may see the supposed birthday of Veda Vyasa introduced as World Theatre Day. For now, we continue with March 27. It's the day on which I must reach inside and find good thoughts about the theatre. The truth is not easy. The theme adopted by International Theatre Institute of UNESCO in 2022 was Theatre and a Culture of Peace. The past 1 year does not have much to show about peace in the world. On the contrary, things have got steadily worse in more and more parts of the world. It's good to confront truth on World Theatre Day. If the origins of the theatre are in questioning beliefs, assumptions, and the status quo, and getting people to wake up and to seek the ever-elusive truth, it's not without society accepting the healthy purpose of questioning. What if societies insist on harming themselves? It's getting more and more difficult for the theatre artists. However, we press on. Wasn't one of Shakespeare's greatest lines about being true to oneself? I'm asked now and then to talk about what sort of toolkit has been useful to me as a theatre artist. The truth? I'm really not much of an actor or director or playwright or designer. I'm much more a theatre educator, a theatre organizer. I can speak more truthfully wearing that hat. So I begin with a question. What makes an artist in the theatre tick? I propose that the question cannot be separated from the larger question, what makes the theatre tick? It has been very clear to me for over 60 years that a healthy and effective artist cannot be separated from the health and effectiveness of the theatre itself. Does this need some elaboration? Let's give it a shot. When PLT restructured and reorganized itself around 12 years ago, preparing for its Diamond Jubilee in 2020-21, we took up an elaborate strategic planning exercise spread over a year. Since I'd worn the management hat over many years, the group requested me to lead the strat plan exercise. The late Shahid Siddiqui, a brilliant actor himself, as well as a senior manager in Bosch, joined me in carrying out the exercise. We studied the parts taken by numerous theatre organizations all over India and elsewhere in the world. Our association with the Director of Education of the Royal National Theatre in London helped. Coincidentally, I had an invitation at that time for a lecture seminar tour of a dozen theater centers in the US. So it was an opportunity to study theater organizations there as well. All in all, it was a fairly extensive strategic planning exercise. Many of the findings were very educative and eye-openers. For instance, the countrywide survey conducted by the late Bunsey Call revealed that over 95% of theatre groups in the country were amateur. For a variety of reasons peculiar to the Indian context, it was not possible to run a truly professional theatre company with all that the term professional entails. Second, the average life of an amateur theatre group was 5 years. There seem to be reasons for that. We can return to this point a little later. Third, there were the city-rural divide, the English vernacular divide, the traditional contemporary divide, and so on. The long period of colonization certainly impacted both the content and performing context of the theatre. We were taught Shakespeare. These dichotomies might have had historical bases, but they were unhelpful for the larger institution of the theatre. In fact, the idea of the theatre as a social institution beyond the performing group had not received the appreciation it deserved. Another finding had its amusement value too. It was from theatre organizations in the metros. It was seen that most successful theatre groups had leaders with two characteristics. One, they were couples, husband and wife leaders. Two, they were members of colonial legacy clubs. This is probably what made their productions social events, and so successful events. Over time, we saw two major consequences of the combined historical forces. The audience for theatre arts separated from the artist, and livelihoods separated from performance. Not surprisingly, the student placement statistics of schools of drama, as few as they are, were pretty depressing. Also noted in the strat plan exercise. The bottom line of all the analysis, while theatre artists in India go to great lengths to enrich the content of a performance technically, we've not done enough to strengthen the social institution of the theatre that must nurture the artist community. There is clearly a highly inadequate social investment in the theatre. The theatre is kept alive by its ardent practitioners, mainly through a great deal of sponsorship. There are, of course, notable exceptions, small islands of excellence. These are typically those more successful in securing funds. True success of a social institution can only be from sustained community participation and support. In India, we still have, thankfully, gurukuls for music and dance, where children can be sent at a young age to learn the art and craft, one step at a time, through tried and tested courses of study. Theatre? Where does the child go? Where are the teachers? Do we see now what is meant by the term social investment? How do we get society to genuinely respect pursuit, the theatre? What does all this mean for the theatre artist and the theatre organization to which they belong? Very early in the life of Bangalore Little Theatre, one of the founders, the legendary Scott Todd, shared a mantra with the members for the future of the organization. We had tasted success with 4 hugely successful early productions, and there was the natural appearance of hair on the upper lip, cat's whiskers. Todd got us to see the reality of the artist organization bind. The artist needs the organization, and the organization needs the artist. They must develop together. Too much emphasis on one at the expense of the other, and both suffer. He should have known, coming from the little theatre movement in the UK that had successfully revived British theatre. Scott Todd talked about some common poisons lurking in the theatre that can kill organizations. We had to be aware of them and keep them away. Poison number one, founder-centric organizations, also seen as personality-dependent organizations. The theatre organization then serves that person's needs and not the needs of the others. Poison number two, huge gaps between the competencies of the leaders and all the others. That decides naturally who does what in productions. Poison number three, star complexes. The group can have a so-called membership, but some members are more equal than others. Poison number four, laxity in finance and accounts. Mismanagement of funds is a natural outcome. Over time, the accounts become opaque. The membership does not know what monies came in and how they were spent, and so on. Do we see now why amateur theatre groups have short lives? Bangalore Little Theatre 2 has had its highs and lows over the first 50 years. The strat plan assessment showed that every time we had a low, it was because one poison or the other had crept into the system. We had allowed it to happen. People will see at once that these poisons are not about performance techniques or skills. They're about organization and management. To me, personally, these are directly connected to the task of building and maintaining a healthy and effective theatre organization. They lead to principles that are more often than not neglected. To me personally, these are far more important than sponsorship success and huge budgets for elaborate set designs. It's the reason I have given so many years of my life to organization and management and developing competencies within the theatre. In our program for training directors, we begin with a listing of skill sets needed in the director. One of them is organization. Not too long ago, Akshara and Nenasam, Akshara and I jointly organized a workshop for leaders of performing arts organizations to introduce them to the needs of organization and management. In my professional work too, I've given a lot of emphasis to the needs of management development for boards of non-profit organizations. A short prefacing comment before I read a passage for you today. Given the questioning purpose of the theatre, some of the greatest writing in the theatre has been about war. More specifically, questioning the human propensity for war. Years ago, I was working on an ambitious project idea to bring together theatre artists from Pakistan and India into a joint production that would pay a tribute to 3,000 years of anti-war drama. The project did not take off. We cannot miss the development of newer and newer technologies to make the elimination of life more efficient. There are two things that must be obvious. First, the pace of development has not been the same steady rate all through the 100,000 years. If it took 10,000 years to move from the hand-thrown spear to a crossbow, it took a mere 50 years to move from bomber aircraft to unmanned drones. Secondly, the impact of any new technology today is far more wide-ranging than a new technology 1,000 years ago. More materials used, more energy, more effort. We seem to be hurtling at faster and faster speeds we never imagined we were capable of. It is said that when Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore took a flight to Iran, Persia at that time, in 1932, he could not help thinking how the newly emerging aerial warfare would make it so easy to kill from thousands of feet up in the air because the aviator does not see the enemy at all. The essay of Tagore I'm going to read is a lesser known piece of writing. It's in the form of a letter and tells a story from France when the Great War was on. The title of the essay is Destruction. Let me give you some fresh news of the world, my dear. There was this little cottage a few miles from Paris, and Pierre Chopin was its master. It was his life's passion to create new plants, matching strains, crossing pollen grains, fusing taste, color, and appearance. It was slow work. It took years to change the nature of a flower or fruit. His patience was matched only by his joy in his work. He seemed to work magic in that garden of his. Red turned to blue and white turned to crimson. Stones vanished from fruits, as did their rind. Fruits that took 6 months to grow began to do so in 2. Pierre was a poor man with no head for business. He would give away costly plants to anyone who uttered a word of praise. Anyone who wanted to cheat him had only to come and say, "What lovely flowers you have on the tree there." People from everywhere are coming to see them. They're all so amazed. It always worked. He always forgot to ask them to pay. There was another great love in his life, and that was his daughter, Camille. She was the joy of his living and breathing moments and was his fellow worker as well. He had trained her to master the gardener's art. She could graft one plant onto another so skillfully and even more skillfully than her father. She would not let him hire another gardener. With her own hands, she dug the earth, sowed seeds, weeded the beds, working quite as hard as her father. Besides all this, she cooked for her father, did the sewing, answering his letters, in fact, looked after everything. Their little cottage under the chestnut tree was sweet with peace and hard work. The neighbors who came to the garden would always remark on it. Father and daughter only smiled and said, "Our home is beyond price. It isn't made with a king's treasure, but with love, the love of 2 souls. You wouldn't find another home like that anywhere." Jacques, the young man Camille was to marry, sometimes came to lend a hand with the work. He would whisper in her ear, "When will it be?" But she kept putting it off, for she couldn't bear to marry and part from her father. Then France went to war with Germany. The laws of the state were harsh and unbending. Men were conscripted, and Jacques had to leave for a serving unit. Even old Pierre was dragged off to the front. Camille hid her tears and told him, "Don't worry, father, I will look after our garden with my life." She'd been trying to create a yellow variety of tuberose at that time. Her father had said it could not be done. She had insisted it could. She resolved to astonish him with it when he came back from the war, making good her claim. Jacques came home from the front on 2 days' leave. He brought the news that Pierre had been made a commandant. Pierre had not been able to come himself, So he had sent Jacques with the good news. Jacques arrived to find that a shell had landed in the flower garden that very morning. The garden had been totally destroyed, along with the person who had guarded it with her life. That was the only mercy. Camille, too, was dead. Everybody had been wonderstruck at the advances in human knowledge and accomplishment. That shell had swept across the sky for all of 25 miles. Such was the progress of civilization.
Thank you for staying on for the full conversation. If you liked what you heard, please share it with family and friends. You can also leave us a review on iTunes or Apple Podcasts. The crew that makes these podcasts possible are Gaurav Krishna and Ishan Gupta on sound supervision and production, with support from S. Sarvanaraj and Raghavendra Tenkaila. Artwork and design is by Chandani Venkataraman of Crisscross Design Studios. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel on your favorite podcast platform. It can also be accessed on our website, bangaloreinternationalcentre.org. Do follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter to get regular updates on our programming. This is Lekha Naidu signing off on behalf of everyone at BIC.